My name is Lars Lohn. I'm an artist that draws mazes, unlike anything you have ever seen before. I work as a software engineer. I'm a programmer. I've had a long career that spans nearly 40 years. I telecommute to Silicon Valley from an organic farm here in Oregon. I live with my husband, a small colony of cats, a couple Harleys, and a whole lot of greenhouses. While I've always considered myself to be an engineer, I can't help but notice that I have surrounded myself with artists for my whole life. It wasn't until recently that I realized that I too am an artist. I create my art with a combination of photography, digital painting, digital drawing, and a whole lot of mathematical graph theory. I'm going to explain all of this, but let's start with a definition. What do I mean when I say that I draw mazes? A maze is a series of branching pathways for which there is exactly one route between any 2 points. Mathematicians in the field of graph theory call this a tree-structured graph. How does one draw a maze accurately so it fits the definition? Computers can draw mazes perfectly, but I draw my mazes entirely by hand. Drawing a maze is easy if a simple algorithm is strictly followed. Say that I want to draw a maze between these 2 green circles. I'll start with a single line. I'll branch the line, but I do not allow either of my 2 new line segments to loop back and join any previously existing line. I can do this over and over. While this technically is a maze, it's not a very interesting one. There is no rule, though, that says the lines between the intersections have to be straight. Now I'm bringing in another branch of mathematics, fractal geometry. Technically, by making the lines curvy, I'm increasing the Hausdorff dimension, or fractal dimension, of the line. This makes the solution far less obvious. Now, if I repeatedly apply this no-merge algorithm as I draw, I will create a perfect maze. As any biker will tell you, it's all about the curves. I've always been fascinated with pathways and whatever curving, branching forms they may take. Highways, mountain bike trails, the branching structure of trees, moss, lichen, ferns, the vascular systems of plants, electronics schematics. And most importantly for my career, I think of threads of execution in software as pathways that I can examine three-dimensionally in my head. Even way back as a child, rather than making snowmen, I made labyrinths in the yard by shuffling my feet in the snow to make the pathways. These are all examples of the same thing, pathways with their own topologies and complexities that can be viewed from different perspectives in three-dimensional space. The act of drawing them transforms them by projection from 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions. Much of my inspiration for my current work in drawing comes from the plant world around my home. One of my favorite subjects is lichen, especially this species, Usnea longissima, appropriately called old man's beard. After finding an intriguing specimen, I take a lot of photos from various angles, sometimes including the natural background, sometimes taking them indoors for better lighting control. So far, I have produced 4 works based on this lichen species. This is Usnea longissima number 2. I especially like how dropping the background to black creates a mood almost of foreboding as the tendrils reach across to ensnare each other. This is Usnea longissima 3, perhaps my favorite of my lichen studies. It looks like a map of some mad freeway system. This work has yielded several additional works composed of expanded details of this structure. Usnea longissima 4 is likely my most sophisticated. I worked hard to make the 2-dimensional drawing appear as 3-dimensional. As I examine it closely, I can almost see parallax. The farm here is rich with trails through the woods, which are fascinating in any season. In the winter, when the river freezes, I can see flowing pathways in the frozen, thawed, and refrozen ice and slush. This piece is called Craters of the Frozen Pond. One of its most interesting features is that I decided to limit myself to only one textural line pattern. The noodly, intestine-like texture captures the frozen flow of the slushy ice very well. Similar to lichen, the common mosses that grow on every stationary surface around here are inspirational with their miniature repeating recursive wedge-shaped patterns. The moss growing on the concrete foundation becomes this study of hard and soft textures. I like the interactions in the different species of moss, the tufts versus the creeping tendrils that push up from the bottom. My tool chain is entirely digital. Just a few years ago, the technologies that I use didn't even exist. Of course, that means that I didn't start drawing until age 55 in 2015. Prior to my husband pushing an iPad and Apple Pencil into my hand, I didn't have any outlets for artistic ambition. Actually, I'm not sure I even noticed that artistic ambition was a missing aspect of my life. Had this technology existed in the 1970s, perhaps my career would have taken a very different path. My current project came to me by surprise. I was walking across the bridge to the little yurt when I spotted a patch of bright orange on the ground next to the bridge. Examining it closely, I realized it was a slime mold in its reproductive phase. I got down on my hands and knees and took dozens of photographs. Studying the tiny pendulous structures, I created the rather fictitious first draft of a digital painting that will serve as the underlying color layer of the maze. Drawing the maze itself can take weeks, as I cannot dedicate myself full-time to the task. This time-compressed video covers perhaps 10 minutes of real time. I chose several variants of a spiral pattern to represent the tip of each of the conical fruiting bodies. Alternating arcs imply the curvature of the cones. Drawing like this is a zen thing to do. It takes almost no mental effort, and I usually find myself more relaxed when I finish a drawing session than when I began. The final result will be spectacular. The maze itself will be extraordinarily difficult to solve. There's probably 2 more weeks of work left for this maze. It's quite amazing to discover a new skill in the latter third of my life. For most of my career in software, I may have been artistic or even poetic in expressing myself in programming languages. But it's not something anyone ever sees or ever reads. Certainly the computers don't seem to care. My mazes have brought me great joy both in creation and presentation. With my whole heart, I embrace this crazy left turn in my life. I'm a biker. I love exploring twisted roads that I have not yet ridden.